Welcome to the Deep Dive. So for about 2 years now, it feels like every single executive team has been, well, scrambling to figure out their generative AI strategy. But let's be honest, for a lot of organizations, that initial shine, it's starting to wear off a bit. You've probably made some investment, maybe seen some really cool sparks of genius here and there, but actually scaling those results, making it, hit the bottom line, that's where some frustration seems to be setting in. We keep hearing this phrase, trough of disillusionment. But here's the twist. Right underneath that frustration, the actual tech opportunity, it's accelerating faster than ever. It reminds me of that old Wayne Gretzky saying, right, the key isn't skating to where the puck is, but where it's going. And according to our source material today, that puck, let's call it the Agentic Age, is moving at, escape velocity.
That's a great way to put it. It really is an inflection point, and it's driven by the tech maturing. A lot of companies are, frankly, still stuck thinking of AI as just a better search engine or maybe a text generator. We really need to reset that frame completely. Yeah. An AI agent isn't just some fancy calculator or an advanced chatbot. It's much more. We define an AI agent as essentially an autonomous digital coworker. It's a sophisticated software system built using Gen AI that can actually plan, act, remember, and even learn autonomously to achieve specific business goals you set for it.
Okay, that word autonomy, that seems absolutely crucial. It means the agent isn't just responding, it's actually carrying out multi-step tasks without someone needing to hold its hand the whole time. So our mission for this deep dive is to cut through that initial Gen AI hype, the simple stuff, and really uncover the strategic roadmap for this agentic age. We're going to look at the forces driving this incredible speed, the real value it's already delivering the numbers, and crucially, the organizational redesign that's needed to move beyond basic automation to, genuine transformation. It sounds like maybe we should just pause any thought of, slow incremental improvement for a minute. The sources we looked at are really clear. This shift to agents is exponential, not linear. And it's because 4 big trends are all hitting critical mass at the same time, feeding each other. So what are those 4 forces that are creating this sense of urgency?
Yeah, they really do create this kind of self-sustaining flywheel where each one pushes the others forward. It means you really, you can't afford to just wait and see, because the tech landscape tomorrow, it's going to look dramatically different from today. So the first force is just the sheer accelerating innovation pace. The capability curve is, it's staggering. We're not talking small tweaks in accuracy here. We're talking about the complexity of the tasks an agent can handle, the length, the number of steps in tasks that AI agents can successfully complete. That's been roughly doubling every 7 months.
Doubling every 7 months. That pace is just... that's hard to even grasp. And you mentioned collaboration is improving too, like agents working together.
Exactly. And that's really the cutting edge right now. New research is showing that these multi-agent systems, basically teams of AI agents that collaborate, delegate tasks, even check each other's work. They've been shown to outperform a single, even incredibly powerful super agent by more than 90% in some cases. So we're already seeing digital teams becoming much more effective than digital individuals.
Okay, so the AI itself is getting faster and smarter at an exponential rate. But that kind of innovation needs fuel, right? Which I guess brings us to the second force. Massive investment grows.
Correct. This is about the infrastructure build out on a global scale. It's enormous. If you look at just the top 3 hyperscalers, your big cloud providers like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, their planned investment in AI infrastructure and data centers for 2025 alone is over $250 billion. And just to give that some context, the actual computing power being used to train the most advanced models, that's growing 4 to 5 times every single year. This isn't some temporary bubble. It's a huge foundational bet on the future.
Wow. That kind of money usually means the tech eventually gets cheaper, more accessible, right? Is that the third force?
Yeah.
The cost side?
Absolutely. That massive investment directly leads to the third force, sharp gains in efficiency and plummeting costs. The cost of actually running these models, what we call inference costs, has dropped so dramatically it makes widespread use totally feasible. Like right now, take ChatGPT 3.5, for instance. Between November 2022 and October 2024, the cost to run inference on it dropped by more than 280 times.
280 times.
Yeah. That kind of price collapse is the economic trigger. It moves agents from being cool niche experiments to potentially core business infrastructure.
That convergence, faster capability, huge investment, plummeting cost is pretty astonishing. Okay, so what about the fourth force? What specific breakthrough capabilities are actually allowing these agents to do complex multi-step work safely inside a company?
Right, so the agents themselves are getting smarter and, crucially, better integrated. They're developing new abilities, sometimes called System 2 thinking, which basically means more complex reasoning, planning, multi-step problem solving. And critically for businesses, we now have standardized ways for these agents to interact with other software things called tool calling interfaces. This lets agents safely and reliably use your existing company APIs, your databases, your internal systems. And like we touched on, there are now these advanced multi-agent orchestration frameworks specifically built to manage those teams of specialized agents working together.
Okay, so it feels like the technology is getting there, the economics are becoming favorable. So the question really shifts from can we do this to maybe how do we deploy this strategically?
The sources lay out this really useful framework, kind of spectrum, organizing how you can use agents. It moves from seeing agents as just tools towards seeing them as like the core operating system of a process. Exactly. And this framework, it's probably the first big decision point for leaders. You have to recognize that the real win, the biggest value, requires moving beyond those initial easier steps. We tend to classify the lower end of the spectrum as agentic labor. This is where agents are basically augmenting human work or automating existing tasks within the current structures. And within that agentic labor category, there are kind of two levels. Level one is individual augmentation. Think of it as a personal assistant drafting emails, helping generate some starter codes, summarizing research docs. The benefit here is pretty immediate. We see individuals getting maybe 20 to 30% higher throughput on their tasks, but the constraint is it often requires a high learning curve for each person, so the impact tends to stay kind of limited to individual productivity boosts.
Right, like a smart tool for me, but not changing the whole process. So what's level 2 then?
Level 2 is task and workflow automation. Here, you take a specific, usually repetitive existing business process, let's say, handling the first simple questions in a customer service interaction, and you automate it end-to-end with an agent. Now the benefits become more organizational. You might see, say, 20 to 40% faster cycle times for that specific task, better cost efficiency. The constraint, though, is that these automated tasks often operate in isolation. They're like little islands of automation, and they hit a scaling ceiling pretty quickly.
Okay, so those first two levels are about improving what we already do. But the real game changer, you're saying, is shifting to the other end of the spectrum, the Agentic Engine. This sounds like where we stop just tweaking tasks and actually start redesigning how the business works. What does that look like at level 3?
Right. Level 3 is what we call functional agentic workflows. This is a big step up. Here, you're using teams of agents, maybe collaborating, to redesign and run an entire process within a specific department or function. Think about totally rethinking financial planning and reporting, or how insurance claims are processed from start to finish. The potential scale here is huge. We're already seeing examples where agent-native systems could potentially handle, say, 60 to 80% of all incoming call center requests with high customer satisfaction. That completely changes the footprint and cost structure of that whole department.
That leads us up to the top level, level 4. This sounds like the complete overhaul, the ultimate vision.
Yes. Level 4 is cross-functional agentic systems. This is where you have agent systems managing really complex processes that cut across the traditional silos of a company. Think about managing something like a mortgage application, all the way from the initial lead coming in, through the credit checks, the underwriting process, the compliance steps, right up to the final approval, all orchestrated and largely executed by a team of specialized agents working together across different functional areas.
The potential value there sounds enormous. The sources mentioned cost reductions maybe up to 70 or 80% per transaction in some labor-heavy areas. But I have to push back a bit here. Knowing how complex big companies are, isn't the real constraint at level 4 less about the AI tech and more about, well, institutional inertia? Letting agents have access across all these different functional systems, critical processes, that sounds like a potential governance and security nightmare.
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. That is the core constraint, and you're right to flag it. The technology is rapidly figuring out the how, but the organization has to grapple with the if and the how safely, achieving level 4. It demands a complete and likely quite painful redesign of the company's operating model. Those traditional functional silos we all know, IT, finance, operations, marketing, they have to start yielding authority to these agent-managed cross-functional value streams. This isn't just rolling out new software. It really is more like organizational surgery.
Okay, that organizational surgery sounds daunting for sure. But leaders need to know this isn't just some futuristic theory. For those maybe feeling a bit skeptical after those initial Gen AI investments didn't radically change everything, is this shift to autonomous agents actually showing up on the P&L? Are we seeing real results today?
Yes, it absolutely is measurable. And the numbers, especially areas that are complex and labor intensive, like, say, software development or IT modernization, they're actually pretty compelling. We're seeing technology modernization projects getting accelerated by 40 to 50% and costs coming down by more than 40%. Why? Because agents can handle a lot of the repetitive heavy lifting, the coding, the testing, the data migration tasks.
That's a serious ROI. Can we look at a specific company example? Someone who's actually built this kind of agent factory successfully.
Certainly. There's a good case study involving a major universal bank. They were really struggling with a huge amount of technical debt, old systems, plus a shortage of specialized developers, which is a common story. So they made a bold move. They decided to build a centralized tech modernization agent factory. This wasn't just one agent. It was a system using 100 different AI agents, all supervised by a surprisingly small team of just 5 humans. This human agent team basically managed the entire modernization lifecycle for specific projects, planning, coding, testing, deployment. And the result, they cut both the time and the labor costs for these critical IT projects by over 50%.
Wow, just 5 humans overseeing 100 agents. That perfectly illustrates that shift from people doing all the work to people supervising the work. If you scale that idea up company-wide, what kind of long-term productivity impact are we talking about across the whole enterprise?
Well, the initial adoption, the basic augmentation, helping people with emails, summaries, maybe some simple task automation that's already driving maybe 3 to 5% in annual productivity improvements in early adopters. And this is the key point, as organizations successfully climb that spectrum we talked about, as they establish dedicated agent teams running these complex redesigned workflows, that figure is expected to accelerate significantly. We could be looking at annual gains rising to 10%, potentially even more. This is the difference between getting small, marginal efficiency gains and achieving truly transformative, sustainable growth and productivity.
Okay, so if the tech is increasingly ready, the costs are dropping dramatically, and the value is demonstrably there, then the pressure really lands squarely on leadership, doesn't it? This stops being just a tech initiative run by the CTO or CIO. This sounds like it has to be right at the top of the CEO's agenda. What are the core mindsets leaders absolutely must adopt to navigate what sounds like a really intense 2 to 3 year transformation?
Yeah, the mindset shift required is, it's profound. And frankly, it's probably non-negotiable for survival. First, leaders absolutely have to reimagine what's possible. That means getting past just tweaking things with AI, past simple augmentation, and truly embracing radical organizational redesign. Second, they need to act with urgency. This isn't something you can wait on for years. The practical, hands-on experience gained now is what will dictate your competitive position later. Early movers being a significant advantage in learning. Third, leaders must tackle scale now. This means making those hard foundational decisions about governance, security standards, data access, the operating model, make them upfront, not as an afterthought once things start breaking. And finally, maybe the most challenging one. They have to commit to turn everyone into an agent leader. This isn't just about training a few specialists.
Let's break down that journey. What does that first crucial phase, say, the first year or two, actually look like? What are the key milestones or markers of success?
Okay, so phase one is really about building momentum and laying the right foundation. The goal here might be aiming for up to, say, 10% efficiency gains across the board. But the really key marker of success in this phase is establishing what we might call agent fluency. You need a significant portion of your workforce, maybe 25 to 50% of employees, regularly and importantly, proficiently using enterprise-approved agents to help streamline their daily work. They need to get comfortable with it. And operationally, the critical mandate for leadership in phase one is to establish that agentic factory we mentioned with the bank example. This needs to be a central, dedicated team, probably cross-functional tech, business process experts, risk, compliance. Their job isn't just deploying tech, it's identifying the highest value workflows ripe for redesign, actually managing that redesign process from scratch, and critically ensuring the governance, the standards, the safety protocols are baked in from day one so these new workflows can actually scale safely without causing chaos or breaking compliance rules.
Okay, so phase one is about fluency and building the factory. Then comes phase two, which sounds like where the really big disruptive organizational shift happens. The structure of the business itself starts to change.
Exactly. Phase two, maybe covering years 2 and 3, is where you aim for those much bigger productivity leaps, potentially well north of 50% in targeted areas. The key success marker here is seeing those initial lighthouse projects, those end-to-end workflow redesigns managed by agent teams, achieve really high levels of automation, maybe greater than 90%. And yes, organizationally, this is where the traditional structure, built on those functional silos, absolutely must begin to erode. You start seeing agent teams guided by their human supervisors, managing value streams that cut across those old departmental lines, focus purely on the outcome, not the org chart.
And inevitably, if agents are taking over the bulk of the actual task execution in these redesigned workflows,
Yeah.
the impact on human labor, on FTE's full-time equivalents, is going to be pretty significant in certain roles, isn't it?
It is. There's no way around that. The fundamental equation of labor is being rewritten in some areas. For example, in highly structured knowledge work, like, say, financial planning and reporting, the sources suggest the need for human labor could potentially drop by as much as 75%. In areas like software development, maybe the reduction is closer to 30 or 40% as agents handle more coding and testing. This really highlights why the talent shift is arguably the single most critical leadership challenge in this entire transformation.
So if the agent is increasingly doing the work, what's the human's job then? If I used to be a coder or an accountant doing reporting, what are the new skills I desperately need?
The human role fundamentally evolves. It shifts from primarily doing the task-level work to directing the work. The essential skill set for almost everyone becomes what you might call agent leadership and supervision skills. What does that mean? It means getting really good at defining precise outcomes for the agents, setting up the right data and API access for them to use safely, tracking their progress and performance, knowing when and how to intervene if the agent gets stuck or makes an error, and importantly, guiding its ongoing learning and improvement. And this requires new ways to measure performance too. Your old KPIs probably don't make sense. Performance management has to shift to measure proficiency in agent management. How effectively are your people orchestrating their digital teams? And this will absolutely demand the creation of entirely new roles, things like an agent orchestrator, whose full-time job is managing the performance, coordination, and scaling of multiple human agent teams working on complex workflows.
And while all this huge internal change is happening in established companies, there's also the external pressure. The competitive threat from AI native startups, the ones built from scratch on this new logic. That becomes really critical, right?
Absolutely critical. These AI-first startups, they're built differently from day one. They tend to have much flatter organizational structures, significantly fewer people overall, and their absolute top priority is attracting and retaining the best agent technology talent. And crucially, they aren't just thinking about adding cool AI features to existing services to get maybe some incremental revenue. Their goal is often much bigger. They are often designed from the ground up to replace existing service models entirely. They aim to operate with near zero marginal cost for delivering automated services, which creates a massive, potentially existential competitive threat for incumbent companies that are too slow to make this transition themselves. Hashtag outro. So when we boil it all down, the agentic age presents a fundamental choice. The decision is really no longer if your organization is going to adopt autonomous agents. It's about how quickly you can transition your organization, your people, your processes, your culture from being primarily composed of task doers to being composed of expert work designers, strategic thinkers, and high-level agent supervisors. Right now, arguably the most valuable competitive asset you can build is the practical experience, the learnings you get from establishing that agentic factory and starting that redesign process immediately.
It feels like the fundamental economic logic of how work gets done, how value gets created, is being rewritten right before our eyes. As these AI agents drive the marginal cost of performing increasingly complex services down towards zero, the entire competitive playing field just shifts. So the core question, the really provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. How will your company define and defend its unique sources of value creation when the basic cost of production and execution for many services potentially drops by 50, 60, even 80% globally? Answering that question, it demands an immediate and probably uncomfortable rethinking of your entire business model, your culture, and especially your talent strategy. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the agentic age.